Hello and welcome to a side quest bonus episode. My name is Dylan Muss and I'm joined by a very special guest here, Patrick Knisely of One Frog Games, here to talk about his game Monochrome Heights. Patrick, we've been friends for many years. I've been on your podcast or X podcast ish in a way a few times, and so it's great to have you over here finally. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Thank you so much, Dylan, for having me. I'm like you said, I've known you for a while, and I'm really thankful that you asked me to come and do this to be a part of this. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, this is going to be a fun episode, really all about just Monochrome Heights, the game that you've been making, and just you and your development and your history making games and that kind of fun stuff. I guess the origin story for people like me and you met a few years ago. You were part of the Super Switch Heads podcast, and you're still involved in the community. You're still on the podcast every once in a while. You're just not a main host anymore. And I just love your guys' podcast, and I just took my shot. I was like, hey guys, can I come on the podcast one time? And you guys had me on there, and then I was on there a couple more times. David has been over here on SideQuest once, so it's fine. It's great to finally have you on here as well. So and then since then, like me and you just kind of talk about game development, checking in on things. We did a game jam earlier this year, which I shouted out many times on SideQuest. So it's been
Yes.
a fun journey, even though we've never met in person. It feels like we have in some way.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And also just like a little life lesson there to shoot your shot, like reach out to people. Like I am not good at that. And anytime somebody like you tells that in an anecdote like that, I'm always reminded of like, what's the worst people can say? No,
Yeah, usually it's just you just get ghosted, which is like, it's fine. I'll just
Yeah,
move
or
on with my
a
life.
lack of no, but yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so let's talk about your game a bit here. So Monochrome Heights is a platformer. I mean you've been at many I guess conferences, these kinds of things. You've shown off the game. You obviously wrote all the text on your Steam page, so I'm sure you have the elevator pitch down to a science. But do you want to give it here? What is Monochrome Heights?
Yeah, absolutely. I say it is a tough as nails 2D pixel art platformer, and it's a pure platformer. There's no action element like you think about like Mario shooting fireballs or damaging enemies. This is all about straight up platforming. And then the sort of more gamer pitch that I have for people that are more familiar with video games, and not you actually need to be pretty familiar with video games for what I just said too, but is it's Ikaruga meets Celeste with a Mega Man aesthetic is the other elevator pitch for you.
Right. Definitely has the Mega Man kind of slide to it. I feel like that's core to the movement of the game.
Yeah.
And I will say so. I've played the game before, but I actually haven't played the latest build, like the final newest build. The game, I guess we should say, is finally coming out here on October 7th of 2025. There's also a demo which I was curious about because I know you put that demo up originally maybe a year ago, a few months ago. Have you updated that, or is that still like an older version of the game, or are you going to take that down? What's up? What's up with the demo?
Yeah, this is definitely an internal debate I had quite a bit around. But I think where I've landed is I'm going to update the demo to
Okay.
be parity with the game. It is not presently prior to release, and I'm not even sure if I'm going to have time to do it right at release, but I hope to. But if you're interested in the game and you're hesitant, it's a big demo. To be like transparent, it's a
Yeah.
good bit of the game, and I am going to. I just came around to the idea of like, why, like, it feels wrong to pull it down, like, which I definitely at first was like, maybe I should. It's like, it's not that hard for me to, the way I designed the demo. I really just have to tick a few boxes in
Mm-hmm.
Unity
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then
True.
like, and then I can push out the demo. So I'm like, you know what? I don't think it hurts,
Yeah.
really, you know,
That makes sense.
hopefully it helps rather than hurts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the game's out October 7th, which I mean, congratulations! It is hard as hell. As hard as your game is, it is maybe even harder to make. Well, it's definitely harder to make a game. So, congratulations. What? I'm trying to think. What year do you remember the year month when you started this thing in
Yeah.
proper?
I do actually. So it's been about 3.5 years since I did the game jam that it came out of.
Hmm.
So I can't remember exactly the day, but it was sometime around late April, early May of 2022 that I did a game jam where we made it a game that is essentially this, but way shittier.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main differentiation between your game and other platformers is the phasing mechanic, where there are platforms and obstacles that are either black or white, and then you like swap the color of your character so that you, I guess, what's the word you would use, like interact or collide with those kind of opposite colors. So it was that part of the game jam. Was that initial premise?
Yeah, I wanted to make a platformer, and the game jam team was just me, my friend who goes by Bent Neatly, who does the music and
Mm, nice.
continues to did the music for the whole release, and then a third fellow who I just kind of knew through doing a few game jams and haven't really kept up much with. His name's Eber, and he actually is the one that pitched that idea.
Oh, cool.
He was like the theme for that game jam was looping, which I think we were thinking of like looping through colors. It actually in the game jam there's three colors that
Oh,
you rotate between. It's black, white, and gray, um, which is way too hard.
yeah.
Uh,
Did it loop like in that cycle, or could you choose like, okay,
you could
I'm
choose to go
okay.
which direction. I think I kind of don't even remember. Actually, I
That
don't.
almost sounds like playing a rhythm game at the same time as playing like a
It's way
platformer.
too hard. Like just swapping between two colors is hard enough. And when I went to make the full game, I definitely thought about including that third color as some extra challenge or something, but I just eventually was like, it's I've made this way hard enough without adding
Yeah.
more things, so
And that was in Unity as well, that game jam?
that's correct, yeah.
Is it the same file that you built off of, or did you start as a new
No,
project?
but the I did prototype it once or twice after the game jam to try to kind of figure out the physics better because I
Yeah.
was pretty green, and I mean I still am, but I've learned so much over the last 3 years. That first game jam was just super floaty, you know what I mean? And I've like since then learned, oh, real or it's not real physics, it's fake video game physics to kind of like slam down when you're coming down and that sort of
Yeah.
thing feels better, and that's how most platformers work. So it took me a few prototypes to kind of land in the general direction, but the file the file that the final game really is called like November 2022 or something like that. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
where I started the project, that
A few
the actual
months
Unity
separate.
project.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha. That's cool. Yeah. Like how do you finally get to the point? Because for me, this was such a hard thing too. Of like the last few months, potion problem. All right, what am I cutting? I
Yeah.
need to finish this thing right now. So how are you? Because I haven't checked in with you in like a few months, and I feel like it sounded like, oh, you're aiming for the end of this year, but like I don't know, might slip to next year again. We'll see. So tell me
Yeah.
about like these last couple months for you and how you've kind of, I don't know if you've had to make any big cuts or if you really just felt like, oh, the game's in a really good place now. I don't need to add any more worlds. Like how have you come to the decision to finally hit the button on October 7th, which is a very satisfying button to hit, I'll say, on
Oh,
Steam. I mean, I guess you've kind of done it with the demo thing when you've released that too, but it feels good.
not the same. Yeah, I look forward to sharing that feeling, but it's coming soon. But yeah, I think I'll be honest. I think I just lost the thread. What can you remind me of the question? I got distracted by the button pushing and getting
Yeah, just
excited.
like in the last couple months, what has led you to the realization of like, okay, the game is finally ready to go?
Yeah. Okay. So I think like any creative project, I was just saw this Leonardo da Vinci quote somewhere else, like literally 10 or 30 minutes ago, that like a creative project is never done, it's just abandoned or whatever. That I don't even know if Da Vinci really said that. It's an internet, you know what I mean? Like
I believe it.
people repeated. He spoke Italian anyway. So uh, I think I kind of just was like, I have to be done with this thing this year. We're coming up on 3.5 years. Like, I think November. I don't even know. I can't do the math in my head. I am at about 3.5 years. It's like I
Yeah.
cannot let this drag into the next year. I mean, I might have to. Like I think I told you, but I was like, I don't want to. And at some point, I just looked at what I had, and I was like, God, this is much more done. Like, maybe you can relate to this, but there have been periods of time where I've had to kind of do a lot of life stuff, like my real job or my day job is
Yeah.
busy or this or that. And came to a period where I had a little more time to look at it, and I was like, I think I can do this by fall, and I'm gonna look at a specific time. And for me, that was, I think, the end of August. And if at the end of August I am good, I'm gonna release it in early to mid October. Like if I feel like I can do it, if I feel like I'm happy with where it
Right.
is, that such that even if it went out now, it would be okay, or you know what I mean. Um, and then after that, I was like, okay, that's the time period. I think I can do it. And then I'm like, oh crap, Steam has an autumn sale from
Yeah.
October whatever until October 6th. And then they have Next Fest from October 13th through this. I'm like,
Mm.
well, I think it's got to go right there.
Smart. Yeah, that
Into
makes
those
sense.
things.
So is the last couple months then, like since that August deadline that you set for self, like no more new content? It's just like polishing, fixing bugs at that point, and then like I guess more marketing stuff at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, I realized the game is in pretty good shape. It's like just a lot of polish and like uh, I think we talked a lot about the gameplay, but this game also has a story and
Yeah.
cutscenes. I mean, maybe it feels almost wrong to call them cutscenes because they are literally just 2D pixel art sprites that are, and then dialogue boxes.
Fits
But
the term. I think that's fair. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But there are these cutscenes, and for me, they're really important. And I think that stuff was a little rougher still, and honestly, there's still a few things that I'm trying to like squeeze um in, especially for the endings right now. Like
Wow. Okay.
I think I'm really happy with the endings, but like, oh, if I can get in and maybe make this a different animation or whatever. So again, I kind of like just decided that it has to be this date,
Hmm.
and yeah, and so it's mostly little stuff, but there's a lot of little stuff. And then like you just like I even now I'm like, oh crap, I found one. I don't know about you, but I could looking back, there's so many design decisions I've made that are like were short-term gain at the expense of long-term pain. And
Sure.
that is
Sure.
like, for example, I have these NPCs that you can talk to, and I wrote tons of dialogue for them, and I'm really happy about that. But they have different colors. Some of them are black and some of them are white, and some of them have two eyes and some of them have one eye. And so I have this code that I just like hard coded in different places for the sprite is this way, and their like portrait is this way. And I wish I had just let one of those things speak to the other rather than
Mm.
hard coding them in two places.
Yeah.
So I'm like every once in a while I'm playing through the game like, oh crap, that's a one-eyed spot, but his portrait is two eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, let me re-export this whole project to fix that
Yeah.
one little thing.
I think that's probably just going to be the case for anyone in our position where like we've done some game jams, done like a little bit here or there, but like this kind of being how we're learning game development through this, this final first full
Yes.
game. Yeah, there's so many things that's like, oh yeah, I could have now that I am better at just the basics of coding. Oh, that could have been so much more efficient. That
Yeah.
like what is hundreds of lines of code could have been like 20 now that I know
Yes, I
how this
could have
stuff works.
had one of those places be the definition of that
Yeah.
robot, and then the other one just pulls from it. But instead, you know what I mean? Like
I mean, I don't
I
even think I
can't
really
change
knew what
that now.
scripts were until like deep into my game, and that's such a helpful thing. But man, meant I was typing and copy pasting things over and over again. But
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of how it goes. Yeah, you've done a lot of game jams now. I'm curious how like I don't know. Do you feel like that was helping you kind of break up the monotony, or like I don't know if you're ever just sometimes you're in a rut where it's like a couple months where like
Yes.
man, this freaking bug is annoying me, or I just am feeling a little lost. I don't know. Did you feel like that helped you like still stretch that muscle, but at least like put your mind in a different place, and also like okay, I have a shorter time frame here.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but I really enjoy doing game jams, but I think I've chosen good times to do them. I've gotten really good at being like, oh, this would be a really good time for me to do a game jam. And I am just like so focused. Like when we did the Chosen one, part of the reason I did that um, at that specific time and that specific game jam was my wife was out of town. And my son who did it with us was like, had, he and I just had a lot of time. I didn't have a lot of work. And so it's like, with my wife out of town, that's all we'll do. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
and yeah, I did that one also selfishly, partly because I was like, if I get in that mode of just like finishing and fixing and just doing the things, maybe I can take that energy into finishing this project. And also I do think it is a little bit of like a palate cleanser and a
Yeah.
reminder of why, oh, this is why it's fun.
Yeah, yeah. Generating those new ideas for the first time is
Yeah.
extremely exciting. I wanted to ask you about that actually. So your son is obviously like a big into game development now. He's making all sorts of stuff. I think it started with Game Builder Garage, maybe. I don't know if that was the first thing he did, but I remember you talking about that on Switch Heads. And now
Yeah.
he's doing stuff. And obviously we worked with him on Chosen One. And then I've followed him on Itch, and I see he's just like posting asset packs and all this stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, because obviously, I mean, he was quite a bit younger than he is now, obviously, when you started this project. But has he had an influence at all? Like, obviously, play testing, giving you like, "Hey, Dad, you should change this thing," or "This doesn't make sense," or I don't know, anything that's come from him. I'm curious.
Well, this isn't exactly what you're asking, but I love this story, and so I'm going to share it.
Please do.
The story itself has a big origin point related to him. So I'm just going to tell this story real quick, and then maybe I can also answer more kind of what
Sure.
you're saying. But so backing up, like, I guess he's 10, so backing up approximately 10 years ago, maybe even more because he's almost 11. Um, when he was an infant, he didn't sleep very well, and I was on night duty pretty much. So I would try to get him back to sleep, and that was a really rough period of time. And I spent a lot of time in a rocking chair in his room at this apartment we lived in, just looking at these paper robots because we had done sort of a
Ooh.
sci-fi theme for his room and for his like baby shower, I think it was,
Okay.
that my brother and my sister-in-law made these little paper robots as decorations and we hung them in his room. And I just sat there staring at them and I came up with names for them. And then I came up with backstories for them. And then I came up with they're on this team. And then this happened. And you know what I mean? Just like way more because that's all I could do.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like was just sitting there holding this kid.
Sorry, is this weaving into like you're telling him like a bedtime story, or you're just doing
No,
this in
this
your
was
head?
just me in my head because he
Okay.
was not even one, he was just a baby. And I took all those ideas and I thought, eventually I was like, maybe I'm going to do something with these. And that's where the story for this game is
That's
from.
amazing.
But to answer your exact question, I mean, he has been one of my biggest champions. Like, I have a little artifact back here, which again, embarrassingly, is from a few years ago, because that's where it's like, this has taken me so long.
Yeah.
Where he's like in his school, like they had like, what are the things you want or hope for, and he wrote like, I hope my dad's game is successful.
That is so cute. Oh
I
my god.
know, right? And so, um, and yeah, and as he's gotten better at stuff, he can talk really intelligently now. Like I don't, to age 10, I was playing as many or more video games than him, but he knows what hitboxes and colliders and like
Yeah.
collisions and like he can just talk about it because he's knows how to do it. So yeah.
So now I actually want to go back to the story you shared of the is Happy, who's the protagonist of Monochrome
Hmm.
Heights, and then the other characters that you have in there, which I don't know their names at the moment.
Yeah.
But are those characters that came from that those origin stories 10 years ago? Then is Happy one of those original few?
Yeah. So
That's so cool.
this little string of paper robots that my family made had 5 robots on it, and I don't want to really spoil because I actually think the story in the game is slowly revealed in a certain way. I don't want to spoil it too much,
Cool.
but the major 5 characters, there's really 3 major characters, but then you'll see some other side ones. Um, yeah, they are those 5 robots.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was something that when I saw the most recent trailer for the game, because now that you have your release date, you have the new trailer up there, and I was seeing like characters and little cutscenes and like backgrounds and stuff that I haven't seen before in the versions
Yeah.
I've played. And I was getting very excited for that because you could talk to NPCs in the versions I've played before, but yeah, I haven't seen what that looks like now. And yeah, I wanted to ask you more about that too because I know environmentalism is like a big thing for you, and that's one of the I don't know, one of the themes I guess you want to tackle here. But without going into spoilers of like revealing things, I'm curious how you just implemented story into a game like this at all, because I feel like that, you probably had just moving around, jumping, platforming for a long time before that stuff really got implemented in there. So how did that process go for you?
Yeah, well, I want to shout out real quickly to Andrea Blythe, who is a woman that I hired, a friend of mine that I hired to help out with the narrative and with writing. When I was kind of like, this is the gameplay, it's solid. I want the story to be something. She came in and helped me kind of take all these ideas I had and like come up with some different pitches for how we could take it. And I actually took some of her pitches and combined them, and then we went in that direction.
Nice.
I think I consider myself a writer, and also it's like really important to me that any game I make has a story and has dialogue, and I'm maybe too much because I love to put in lots of words and stuff. But and you think about platformers aren't typically right, like that's not normal. Like maybe Celeste kind of changed that a
Yeah.
little bit,
Hmm.
but Mario and stuff is just like there's a princess and you gotta save her. There's not even we don't know
Now that we
much.
got a movie, now there's a lot of dialogue, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
deviating from where we started.
So I think I wanted to kind of take what Celeste did and continue, and there is NPCs on the levels that you can completely optionally talk to. Like you don't have to, they're actually at the very beginning it kind of railroads you into talking to the ones that tell you how to play the game, but
Right.
otherwise it's all optional. And then I have the game broken into what I'm calling zones. You can use the word world, but I call them zones. And in each zone, there is a story beat, which is, I don't think this is a spoiler. They are all flashbacks. But there are things that happen in the present moment as well. And in the present moment, you have dialogue choices. And the choices do matter. I will say
Cool.
they will
Okay.
send you in a certain path. There are multiple endings depending on your
Ooh,
dialogue
exciting.
choices.
That's really cool. So would you have to like start the game from zero to experience those different endings then, or can you kind of like I'm gonna start from zone three now and then like pick different things here or
Yeah, I might need to. If enough people like care, right? Then I might have to come up with some way to in game allow you to do that. You would, without giving too much away. It's hard for me to decide what to say here.
there? You don't have to reveal anything if you don't want to.
I
It's
don't
it's
know that
funny though. Like
No, I think people care about this though,
yeah,
right? Like because some people are like, number one, I will say that there's no right or wrong ending. Like, sometimes I feel like in games, like you get the bad ending or you get the good ending or you get the non-canon ending. There are three endings and I think they are all appropriate. Like,
yeah, they're all
okay. And
satisfying. Yeah.
yeah, I'd like to think at least, though I'd be curious what people say. Because honestly, like I did a lot of playtesting on the gameplay, but the story has always been really close to me, and Andrea and I have worked on it together, but like I haven't like user tested the story, if you
Yeah.
will, because I'm like, you know what, if people don't like it, I like it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I'll be
especially what you're
curious.
saying there of there's a lot of dialogue that is optional. I mean, that's going to be extremely hard to playtest anyway
Yeah,
because you don't know
yeah,
like okay, exactly what lines of dialogue did you see unless you like build it into the game where you can like get a file exported that tells you like
yeah,
exactly what people saw, but even then you don't know if they actually read it or like
right.
processed it. So that's a tricky thing, but that is exciting, but it is a funny thing too you mentioned there of like bigger games, like huge AAAs that have the day they come out, there's already an IGN guide that tells you how to do all the different endings and stuff. But that you don't necessarily have that luxury for a smaller indie game. It's not going to necessarily have all the big news sites with their guides on how to do all these different endings. So, but I think that adds to the mystery too. Like people are gonna have to find that stuff out for themselves unless you put
Yeah,
it into the game in like an actual way that people can track. I guess.
right. And if you're out there listening to this and that's important to you, you can message me. I'll tell you, I guess, how to get what endings. It's kind of obvious, I think. Like I tried
Okay.
to make it so that like it's you can pick up on it, if that makes any sense. But I'm not trying to be vague, but I also think that the story is a cool part to explore and experience without knowing much, you know.
Yeah. No, I'm very excited to experience that part of it because I that's not really what I was playtesting when I played the game
Yeah.
year or two ago. Going back to some gameplay a little bit, one thing I want to ask you about is I think the verticality of this game is really interesting and novel in that a lot of games do have like you're kind of going up and up and up, but I feel like in this game you're going horizontally for a bit, whether that's right or left, and then you go just a tiny bit up, a few platforms up, and then you start going the opposite direction. It makes kind of like an S shape, but I feel like there isn't like some huge big divider between those layers. So you can often, be going for a tricky jump, fall, and then you'll fall to like a previous part of the level. Now maybe you've got a checkpoint, you can just, zip back up to that next one. And then sometimes you also use that to like, okay, now I'm going to jump down and grab a collectible that I couldn't reach before, but now I could. But I think that's such a fascinating thing to me is like how close those layers are, and it makes the levels feel like super dense and compact in a really interesting way. And I'm curious if that's something that you kind of planned, if you were going for, or if it just kind of happened with the level design and then you kind of just obviously built off of it as you saw that was kind of how it was going to work out.
Yeah, it totally just happened. Um, I think it happened for two different reasons. Um, One of which is that it's really interesting. If it was just a horizontal platformer, um, it it would be fine. But with the phasing, the color swapping mechanic, it's almost more interesting if you have to go through things, right? And you have to like kind of pass through vertically, because if it's just horizontal, we can put, barriers and
Mm-hmm.
things that you might have to pass between. But that kind of it just sort of naturally lended itself towards going up because of that. And I don't remember if that came first. I don't remember, even honestly don't remember how it was in the game jam, how it became a little bit more vertical.
Mm-hmm.
And then I really leaned into it with the full game. But
Nice.
simultaneously with Bent Neatly, who did the music, we came up with this idea of as you climb, and this got abandoned in the full game, but as you climb in the game jam, the music evolves. So like he had a bass, just like drum track that you hear at the bottom, and then as you got to a certain height, the bass would kick
Cool.
in,
Okay.
and then as you got to another height, the synth would, or whatever, like, and so, and that added a lot. And we definitely considered keeping that, but it was like that's a lot of work for a bunch of levels, right? To make every song have different tracks that all
For
loop,
sure.
that kind of come in and out. And also it was kind of predicated on the game jam, where you would often fall and there were no checkpoints, you know what I mean?
Ah,
So then the
yeah.
music would go back to just the drums, and you'd be like, oh no, I fell down to the bottom. um, which was not very user friendly, but was, is like extra painful, right? And so
Yeah.
like it's like, well, we got to have checkpoints, and we got to just have the music be good music that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't
That's
change.
That's a fun thing that can happen too because of the phase mechanic. Like sometimes, as I said, you're going for that typical jump, you fall a layer, but if your color that you have, if you don't have the correct color selected, you might just keep falling and falling and tumbling all the way down. And then
Yes.
obviously, once again, you do have a checkpoint somewhere that'll help you out. But I don't know. I like that it just you kind of remember like, oh yeah, I remember 10 minutes ago when I was stuck on this part. I like fell back there for a moment, a little bit of nostalgia or something. But it's been fun for me like in playing the different versions and just like really to treating it as like a speed run game now. Like on the earlier levels that I have played a couple
Yes.
times now, maybe they've had little variations here or there. But even just like knowing those mechanics, because the first time you play it, it is quite the like mind twister, right? Of just trying to get those
Yes.
phasing down. That's also something I'm curious about. Like obviously like the color of your character changes, but I feel like that's also something as the developer you could get so in the weeds of it. You're so used to it, but I don't know how much did you have to really work on that or like adjust things just to make sure people could really grasp the
Yeah.
concept.
I think it is really a weird mechanic, even for people who are really good at video games at first, right? Like I've definitely at conventions and with friends who've play tested it, seen the gamut of people who get it quickly or don't, you know what I mean? And I think also a lot of times people who have more experience with platformers and that sort of thing tend to get it faster.
Mm-hmm.
But even people who are decently experienced sometimes, and because it is just different. You have to start thinking about the space a little bit differently, right? The virtual space, that is. But yeah, I think pretty instantly, the game jam that we came out of was also themed around black and white. So
Okay.
I think it was just always black and white, right? And then, like I said, originally gray as well. But so I just took that forward. There was a brief moment where I questioned it, like, could it be purple and green or whatever? Would that be more readable or whatever? And I think I just decided no, like I'm just gonna stick with this. But the tricky things were like a little bit of feedback early on of like I put a white outline on the black guy and a black outline on the white version of him, and sometimes some people found that a little confusing. And then when I had an artist early on draw some platforms and stuff, a lot of artists, I mean, pixel art in general, are not going to use hard black and white, right? Like they're going to use softer tones of white. And I kept the first few times he made platforms, I was like, it needs to be more white. It needs to read more white. That reads gray. And he'd be like, well, that's white, And I'm like, no, it needs to be like F F F F F white. You know what I mean? Like, and but I also like was pretty a novice to pixel art myself at the time, so I see their point, and I think we kind of ended up meeting in the middle because now I would be like, yeah, we don't want it to be too white. That's bright and harsh. So those were some of the challenges of that. And I think for some people it is just too hard and too confusing. Like, I mean, this is not a game for everybody. That's something I decided pretty early on too.
Right, you got to be into platformers to want
Yeah.
to sign up for it in the first place. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you might think about this too, making games, right? Where you're like, I'm not trying to make a game for everybody because those games exist and they're already doing well, and I'm not going to be able to market a game for everybody, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's easier when you're in a position like us to try to find a smaller niche or to lean into that a little bit. I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to the art, because I see you all the time on Discord. A Sprite's open 99% of the day. I feel like when I see your name there. What was because you obviously mentioned the music and you had some help with the writing and story, and obviously I think as far as I know, you've done like all the coding for the game, like all the design and level design and stuff. But how about the art? What's the balance on that? Like, how much of it have you done versus your artist there?
Well, I did actually hire a couple people to help with programming at first too.
Okay.
When I first started, I wasn't very good, and I got a couple lessons from somebody who helped write some code, which I'm not even sure if it's really in the game anymore, but like I still credit him because it did.
Of course,
What I mean? And then I did hire somebody else to help me fix one problem that I was really stuck on.
Can you
So
share
I
what
just
that
wanted
is?
to say,
If
what's that?
Can you share what that is? That problem that
Oh
you helped
yeah,
you? If you
sure.
want
It
to,
was
I'm so
moving
curious.
platforms.
Okay.
What's really funny is that like I've now dabbled in Godot, and moving platforms
Yeah.
in Godot, they just work. I know how to make them work. They work great with depending on what you're doing and using at least what my limited Godot experience. Probably I would run into this same problem there once I'm trying to write custom physics and stuff. But in Unity, I just ran into this problem that like every tutorial I found worked a little bit, but caused this problem. I mean, I'm not answering your question about art now, but I'm talking about
We'll get back to
programming. But like another thing that really was hard and is still hard is the darn black and white thing. Like half of my stuff has to turn off, you know, on a frame, and half the stuff has to turn
Right.
on, and that causes so many weird issues. Like
Yeah.
to,
Did the
to
game ever like stutter when you would do that because it's so many things triggering at once? Or
No, but it's more like, oh crap, I need that to cannonball to explode, but so I can't turn off its collider because it needs to know that it's hitting the wall, but it can't collide with the player. So I need to really think about how to write all these. I mean, it's not even that complicated. It's just stuff that when you're a beginner is like extra complicated, right?
yeah,
To
there's like different
do that.
endings to all these props in the world,
Yeah,
depending
it's
on
like
when
depending
they
on
start and
whether,
then what color they are when they finish. Yeah.
yeah.
Nice.
But to go back to the art, yeah, I was I was not very good at pixel art, but I was trying to learn when the game started, and so I hired a couple of people to do art. Um, I would sometimes do a really rough version of it and send it to them, and then they would improve on it, or and then I mean, I almost every piece of art, with the exception of the story backgrounds, I have touched up as I've gotten better and as I've looked at the art and been like, oh, they left a stray pixel here. Sometimes
Mm,
years later realizing that too,
yeah.
right? Like after I've stared at it, I'm like, I don't know how I missed that frame of animation has, the leg
Hmm.
wrong or whatever, but I'm seeing it now. Um, I've gotten a lot better. And at this point, like I was telling you, I kind of saved some of the endings and story stuff till the end. I was like, I now can do those animation where it's like I need a new animation for the ending. I knew I needed like 10, and I was like, do I need to hire somebody? I'm like, not anymore. Now I've got it.
That's great.
I mean, I'm not trying to be like, ooh, I'm the best pixel artist, because I'm not, but like I think I can confidently take the existing assets
Yeah.
and like make a new animation and stuff like that. And that's a big step for me. Because I've gotten a lot better at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I'm assuming that most of these people that you worked with or hired weren't really communicating with each other. It was more just like you
Right.
kind of being the mastermind of it, the puppeteer, so to speak. And I feel like with the game jam that we did, like I feel like you were such a great leader in that. There's four other people, but I feel like you just got everyone together and all that. Worked really well together. Great communicator, very open feedback and all that stuff too. Do you have a favorite thing though? Like when you're working on the game, is there a favorite part for
Mm-mm.
you? Is it level design? Do you
It
actually
is.
find that you love the coding? Like what is your favorite
It's
part?
level design. You said it first. Yeah. I
Nice.
think like when you said, oh, what have I done just me? And I mean, I guess I haven't really done that even just me, because I've had people play test it and I've watched them and I've taken their feedback and I've adjusted it. But the level design is the one thing that like is all me. Like I really enjoyed the process of creating the new mechanics, combining them. I took a very mathematical approach in this game for some reason, maybe because it's robotic themed and stuff like that, in terms of the levels and how they progress and what elements are in them.
Mm.
And I think just I could I had to be at some point like, we got to stop making levels, because people aren't going to want to play past world 8 or 9, you know what I mean? Like but that was probably the part that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I feel like that's maybe a dangerous one then for that to be your favorite thing because that easily just like rolls into this huge scope issue where you're like, well, I could
Yes.
just keep making levels all day long. But then, okay, well, now I need new zones. Now I need to do art. Now I need to, how is the story going to work across these things? So at some point, you just got to say, okay, fine, I'll stop. And then maybe you can do more later in a bonus way or something.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, did you find that, were there any worlds or zones that just didn't end up working? You just had to chop them, or you just felt like, pacing wise, this one's good, but like I just want the game to be tighter and more focused. Like how did that go for you? And was it tricky after you spent hours and weeks making a level and have to get rid of it? Did that ever happen in a way that was heartbreaking?
Yeah, there's definitely three major mechanics that I have levels that I actually think are pretty solid levels. Which I think you even might remember the wind level.
I do remember the wind.
Um,
Yeah.
I cut that, and I cut two other mechanics that I designed full levels for. And the wind level, especially, I feel like I polished quite a bit and then just cut it. And that one
uh,
feels a little sad, but I actually, to your point, like I'm like, it might show up in an update, as a
okay.
bonus thing at some point. If I ever get around to that.
Yeah.
No promises, but it is something I might do. And then there are some variations. Like I think, like it's just iteration, right? Like where when I first was making these levels, there wasn't a lot of consistency. But then at some point, I decided, okay, every level has to have 4 checkpoints, and so and every level should be, each checkpoint should be roughly this far apart. Maybe later levels that are longer segments. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and some of that was just feel, but at some point then I was like, okay, I gotta do this. And so a few levels got severely changed because of that, where I was like, oh, this level has 3 checkpoints. I need to lengthen it, or this one is way too long. You know what I mean? It needs to be shortened or whatever, and those sort of things. But those never felt quite sad. Um, Usually, most of the times, the improvements feel good.
Yeah.
Um,
Nice. Yeah, one thing I love too about I feel like most of the levels, if my memory is correct here, is that the last like little romp up to the actual exit is like really easy. So you feel like you got through all this challenge, and then you can kind of just like blast through over to the exit here for just like some easy platforms up, which I feel like is a nice little dessert, I guess, at the end of each level, which is
yeah,
fun.
one thing I kind of came around to, and it's not exactly true on every level, but it's pretty true for most levels, is that with 4 checkpoints, that essentially makes 5 segments, right?
Yeah.
Um, Between them. And one segment on each level is pretty darn hard. I just tried to make one be like, that's the challenging segment. I don't want to have 2 or 3 that are super hard. I want to have just one. And usually it shouldn't be the last one, right? Like that should be a little bit of a downhill, right?
Nice.
Like slide.
Yeah.
So,
That's good for the pacing of it. Do you put you on the spot here? Do you have a favorite zone or a favorite level?
oh man, I think it's the last one. I think
Oh,
the
okay.
and I don't want to say why because I think
Sure.
it's just a little different than all the rest of them. And
Gotcha.
also, like I said, I mechanically approached the game. I really like mathematically broke down how the levels work. And so level 9 is where everything is combined. Every mechanic is in it, or zone 9, I should say, is where every mechanic is in every level. Um, and that
Love it.
feels really like, oh, huh, like this is what we're building up to. And here it is. So,
That's great. That. I don't know if you played Neon White, but they kind of did that too, where the every world has its own new kind of main mechanic to it, and then the final one is combining everything, and it just feels amazing. And it feels
yes.
like, yeah, it's so rewarding after you spend all this time to learn all this stuff, and maybe you haven't seen one of them in a while,
Right. Yeah.
and for
It's
all of
been
it
a
to come
minute. Oh,
back,
yeah. The
it works
springs or
so
whatever.
well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love it. Question for you on marketing it because I've been extremely off social media, so I haven't seen if you've been posting much. But what
Good
has
for you.
marketing been like for you? And is that something you enjoy, or is that more like, "Ah, okay, I just have to do it"?
Yeah. That's probably the thing I'm the worst at. The example I always tell everyone is, so you can see behind me in the video these puppets right here. I used to make puppets. I did it primarily as a performance thing. I was a puppeteer, and I mostly made them to perform with. But I also did a couple of like craft shows and made puppets to sell. And I remember somebody calling me out because I convinced somebody not to buy a puppet from me. Like that's how good at marketing I am. That is the example I give. Like I think it's just I think like a lot of people, especially in this day and age where everybody's trying to market themselves and you're a brand and sell yourself, that just doesn't feel authentic. And I've never liked pressuring people, and I've never liked being like, hey, look at me, so it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard for me to bridge those things, um, and find a way that feels authentic and doesn't feel like I'm just posting a bunch of stuff. So I've
Yeah.
not done a very good job of it, to be completely honest. And I've tried and I've pushed myself and I'm trying in these, and I will continue to. But I will, if you've got advice or lessons or whatever, like I'm open minded on that stuff. Yeah.
I don't know if I can help you much because that's also something I didn't enjoy. And, I probably should have done a lot more marketing before launching Potion Problem if I wanted it to be more financially successful. But I think I
Right.
just wanted to be done with it when I was at that point.
Yeah.
So,
Well, like, I think one of the things that I tell myself is also like the success is not necessarily financial success, right? And I think
yeah,
for
for
you it's
sure.
probably the same, right? It's finishing it, or there are different levels of success or different aspects of it, and financial success is one piece of it. And I don't think financial success is very likely on your first game, right? Like your first
Especially these
commercial
days
game.
with how many games
Yeah,
are on Steam on a daily basis at this point.
right. So I think
It's
it's
tricky.
more about obviously that we shouldn't use that as an excuse to not do it, which is easy to do. But I think there were different parts or different time periods over the last 3 years where I've really like needed, quote unquote, this game to do well financially. Like when I was working a job that I really was unhappy in, for example, where it's like, this will get me out. You know what I mean? And that's not really a healthy or helpful
Yeah,
attitude either, right? To like,
understandable.
so I think now that I have a job where I'm happy, um, I would be great if the game made a lot of money, but that's, not that's not success, right? For me right now.
That's
It
yeah.
wouldn't
That
hurt, but
sounds. No, I mean, I just love how self-aware you are of that. It feels very healthy, the way you set it up there, and that was something I wanted to mention too. Because I feel like my one part that I remember a big part of this development was when you were doing the monthly, I think it was monthly dev logs, right?
hmm
And I think that was because you were working a full time job and then you left that and then you were kind of putting a lot of time into the game and then you had to get a job again. And then
yeah,
at some point in there, like switch heads, you were on there and not off there. So just in
yes.
terms of like how much time you have on a daily basis, but those dev logs, I really love those. And I don't
Oh,
know how much
nice.
those move the needle in terms of like the marketing side of it, but even for me personally, just like to have that and feel like, oh man, so many of these feelings you're having, I'm feeling too at working on my project
Yes.
and stuff, and just how personal it was, and just to see those updates was really fun. So I really enjoyed those devlogs. Those were cool.
Yeah, and I think maybe you can relate to this too as somebody who's making a game. Like I did hire out parts, but it still is me at the end of the day, like making the decisions and telling people what to do, and it's really my game, right? Like ultimately, like you're doing so many things that like it's really like all this time that you're spending marketing, or especially if it's stuff that you're not sure that it even matters, like posting
Yeah.
on social media or
Yep.
writing devlogs. Like it's really nice to hear you say that, because I would write these things and I would share them, and then I'd just be like, did I just waste a lot of time that I could have been working on the game when I have limited time because I'm working a job? And you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like writing this and thinking of this idea and sharing it, and that's kind of where I landed and that's where I've also kind of like, especially for this first game, of like, I just need to make the game. Like that's without that, like you have nothing. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think inherently too, like if you go on to make other games, release more games on Steam, the fact that you have something else on Steam and people can be like, oh, I wonder what this project is. Click on the developer name. Oh, there's another game here. I'm gonna check this game out. Like I feel like there's a lot of that starts happening naturally over time too. Once you build up a bit more of that, but
absolutely.
yeah.
I, I mean, I was talking to somebody else about this, a writer friend of mine, Dan. You know Dan,
Oh,
and,
mm-hmm.
and he was like, "Yeah, think of them as like lightning rods. Like, not all of your lightning rods are gonna attract lightning, but the more you put out there, one of them might hit. You know."
Yeah,
And
right.
I liked that metaphor that he used. So that's how it's like. That's why I'm like, I've learned so much from doing this. It would be, I mean, it wouldn't be stupid to quit, but it would be like, in some ways, I'm like, it would be stupid to not try one more time. You know what I mean? Be a little more efficient, be a little bit
Yeah.
more knowledgeable. But I
Yeah.
also totally understand why people make one game and then they're like, that was a lot of work and I never want to do that again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh, okay. I don't think I have any more like specific game questions, but I guess other than yeah, you kind of already hinted at it. Maybe like post launch, you might maybe do some more levels or something. But what like right now, obviously we're a few days out from the release date. In an ideal world, what does like the post launch look like for this for you? Like maybe a couple bug fixes. Maybe you want to do a bit more, or are you kind of like ready to move on and try something else? Where are you at right
Yes,
now?
it's funny because if you'd asked me that question like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I would have been like, I'm gonna do the bug fixes and I'm gonna move on. But something about being knee deep in it right now, I'm like, maybe I'll do one small content update. Um, but I also could see myself really changing my mind. Um, you know what I mean? And some of it is like and I don't expect like hundreds of thousands of people to buy my game or anything like that, far from it, but like some of it is, well, what happens, like is there people who are playing it that where it feels like if I put out a content update there would actually be people who
Right.
would enjoy it, or have the people that have played it and moved on, and it's kind of silly to do that. So I think it's a little bit of gauging that, but I definitely want to at least do a handful of
Mm-hmm.
updates to fix things. And there are things on my list right now that are like small polishy things that I'm like, I'll package that in with a bug fix update if I can. You know what I mean? Like little
Mm-hmm.
quality of life things. I don't even know what they are off the top of my head, but there's a handful of things where I've been like, yeah, that would be good if I did that, but it's not critical, and so that could fit in with a bug fix update, a
Mm-hmm.
1.1 or whatever, you
Right.
know. We'll see if we ever get to the 2.0.
Yeah. Well, and then you mentioned also like maybe revamping that demo, or I guess just updating that demo to have
Yes.
something that's a bit more reflective of the final product there. Which, because I forget what the demo is currently. Is it just
So the
a
demo's
couple
actually
levels? I can't remember
really
what it
meaty.
is.
It's really meaty,
Okay.
actually. It is about a third of the game.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is a lot, and that's why I was definitely hesitating. I was like, is this too much to give away for free? That's why I'm like, if you're on the fence, check it out. You know, I don't think it's that hard for me to update it, so it just kind of makes sense for me to keep that at parity every time I do a bug fix, unless it doesn't affect the demo, you know? So I kind of plan on continuing to support the demo as long as I'm supporting the
Mm-hmm.
game. But if there are content updates and stuff like that, that's not going to go in the demo.
Yeah. 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 And then how about, so obviously game jams, I'm sure you plan to do a lot more of those, but I've found for sure, especially in that last year of making Potion Problem, the amount of intrusive thoughts I had to push away of like, oh, I have a cool game idea and I really want to
Oh,
work on this.
yes. Yes.
Are you just bubbling with those right now, or are you like trying your hardest to like dig a hole, throw them in the hole, and
Oh,
then bury it up?
I definitely am bubbling with those. And I think doing the game jam with you and the game jam I did prior to that, both of those inspired me. I mean, I wouldn't even mind returning to that idea. Like that was a cool
Mm-hmm.
idea.
Yeah.
But also, like I think I found myself. It's kind of funny because I think game jams will do that to you. Like my son and I both, after one of the game jams, were both like sitting here working on new ideas. And then I'm like, wait a minute, like this is dumb. I'm
Yeah.
doing, I'm
My
doing
rule was
art.
like, as far as I'll go is I'll put things on a Google Doc, but I'm not allowed to open a new game maker
I
project.
was doing art for like a different game, and then I was like, whoa, like stop it. This is cool, but like let's slow our roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I definitely don't know exactly. I have what I'll do next, but I have a lot of ideas. Yeah.
Gotcha. So as we wrap up on Monochrome Heights here, I don't know, do you have any final lesson or a final funny story or a funny glitch in the game? Like, I don't know, one good final anecdote for us?
uh, yeah, I think it's just. I mean, well, maybe a couple things real briefly. Like the glitch that just won't go away is like I have had this cannonball glitch in the game, and I fixed it, and I've tried to fix it, and I fixed it in multiple different ways. And then just yesterday, I think it was maybe 2 days ago, I realized that the fix I was implementing it only works in the editor and doesn't work in the build.
Oh,
Because I was playing the game and it happened, and I'm like, what the heck? I went to the editor and I'm like, it's fixed. And then I just was like, wait a minute, I think this is something is, you know what I mean? If you ever had that problem, that is a really frustrating problem to have where something works in the engine but doesn't work in your builds.
yeah.
And so I basically had to redesign a solution differently that at least I think is working. And that was just the other day. So that was like a little stressful, but also it's not that big of a deal. It's not a glitch that like really matters. It's just a visual
Okay.
thing. I mean, it does. Basically, the cannonball will fire twice sometimes if you respawn at just the right time in its firing sequence,
Hmm.
and it has two cannonballs. And I'm like, and it looks ugly, and
Okay.
it just kind
Well,
of
at
is.
least your game is hard, so if that happens, people are like, "Oh, it's just a hard game. There's some
Just
cannonballs this
extra
time."
cannonball, yeah. So that one is like frustrating and funny to me at the same time. But I also feel like I don't know. There are some glitches that have been around for a while, and as I've gotten better at programming and coding, like I'm just so much better at bug fixing now.
Yeah.
Um, and and debugging and that sort of thing. Like, so there are some like that one, for example, and another glitch or two that had been in the game for a really long time that I hadn't even messed with because they're just kind of minor and rare. Where when I finally sat down within the last month or two to try to fix them, I'm just like, oh, that's what it is. And it's like, I tried to fix this a year ago for like a week straight and couldn't figure it out. And here I am in 1 hour, like identifying and solving it, you know? And so maybe there's a lesson there of like, that's another reason I'm like, I got to just make a second game because I'm not saying I'm great at any of these things because I'm really not, but I have leveled up.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Right on. That's great to hear. And then just one last question for you, and this is a selfish one because I don't get to listen to you on a weekly basis on a podcast anymore. What have you been playing lately? Any gaming highlights of anything you've played in the last? I know I'm sure you've been way too busy just working on Monochrome, especially in the
Yeah,
finish line here. But what have you been playing?
I have like been putting off playing games. I was in the last few months. Like I bought Donkey Kong Bonanza and I didn't
Nice.
touch it, and my son played a lot of it, and I was
Okay.
like, no, I can't play that. And then I broke down and I was like, I have to play something. Like I can't deny myself of one of my favorite hobbies, like just because. So I picked up Chicory,
Oh, nice. I
and I
love
started
Chicory.
playing Chicory, and then Silksong got announced like last minute,
Yeah,
and
because
I
you were
was
a big
like,
Hollow Knight guy,
I'm
right?
a
You love the
huge
original.
Hollow Knight fan,
Yeah.
yeah, like, and that's very inspirational to me, and so I was like, well, I can't avoid Silksong. So the two games I've been playing quite a decent amount of somehow on top of all this is Chicory and Silksong.
Nice, nice. Okay, I don't want to get any spoilers out there for Silksong, but I'll ask you off cast where you're at in the game because I'm curious. But no, that yeah, Silksong was super good, and yeah, Chicory. I love Chicory. I think that was made in Game Maker actually, which has always been inspirational for me. Like I can't believe this is possible in Game Maker. Like there's so many things I need to learn. Clearly, I thought this engine was limited, but I see a game like that, and I'm like, my mind is just blown.
Yeah, but that and Wandersong, which is the main developer's previous game, were both
Right.
made in Game Maker.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so October 7th, Monochrome Heights
Yes.
is out. If people want, they can also play the demo. I guess, obviously you're not a big marketing guy, so let's also help you out by maybe going to the social medias, throw a like or a comment on your stuff. Where should people go to support you and the game in general?
Yeah, so my social media accounts, and my presence in Discord or anywhere else is PDYX is what I go by. Sometimes websites require you to have more than four characters, so a lot of places I am PDYX123. And then the name of my game studio is One Frog Games, and I have an account for that on most places too. So yeah.
Right on. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining me. This, like I said, a long time coming to get you over here on SideQuest. This has been a joy, a pleasure. It's always I feel like very cathartic for me too to just hear the development of your game and how it kind of mirrors things I've seen in my life too. So thank you for finally joining me here. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you again next time. Bye bye.